In 1997, the Supreme Court of India, in a ruling of Vishakha versus the state of Rajasthan, acknowledged the gravity of sexual harassment of working women. And they laid down guidelines making it mandatory for employers to prevent sexual harassment and to provide the procedures for the resolution, settlement, or the prosecution of acts of sexual harassment. So the Vishakha guidelines, as they came to be known, were treated as a law. Over time, it was felt that guidelines and norms are not sufficient to deal with the incidence of sexual harassment of women at workplaces, and a strong piece of legislation is the need of the hour. And therefore, the Act was enacted in 2013. The Act went one step ahead and included various issues which remained unaddressed in the past, such as extension of the definition of workplace to include almost all types of establishments, including private sector organizations, dwelling places, or houses, inclusion of the term of domestic worker and unorganized sector in order to address the issue of sexual harassment for all women. We're just going to go over some definitions of, say, sexual harassment and complaints committee. Um, so the Act has adopted the definition of sexual harassment from the Vishaka judgment, and the term includes any unwelcome acts or behavior, such as physical contact and advances, a demand or request for sexual favors, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography in any or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. It also includes any form of sexual harassment, such as the promise of preferential treatment or the threat of detrimental treatment to a woman's employment, and threat to her present or future employment, interferences with work, or creating an intimidating or offensive and hostile work environment, humiliating treatment that's likely to affect the health or the safety of a woman. So that talks about like what sexual harassment is, like the definition of the harassment. So the Act makes it mandatory for every employer to constitute an internal complaints committee, hereby known as ICC, which entertains the complaints made by any aggrieved woman. And the members of the ICC, it mandates there should be a presiding officer, at least two members from the organization that are preferably committed to the cause of women, one member from an NGO or any organization associated to the cause of women. And in order to ensure the participation of women employees, the Act requires that at least half of the members of the ICC are nominated by employers have to be women. And any organization that has less than 10 workers, or if the complaint is against the employer himself, they can form a local complaints committee. So the complaint procedure is as follows. The Act stipulates that aggrieved women can make a written complaint of sexual harassment at the workplace to the ICC or the LCC within a period of 3 months from the date of incident, and in a case of series of incidents, 3 months before from the date of the last incident. So if the aggrieved woman is unable to make a complaint in writing, then reasonable assistance shall be rendered by the members of the ICC or by, and it can, like the complaint can also be filed by relatives, friends, co-workers, or an officer of the National Commission for Women or State Commission for Women, or any person who has knowledge of the incident with the written consent of the aggrieved woman to help her make the complaint if she is physically unable to.
Underlining point so far as sexual harassment laws is concerned is for the employer to come forward and assist its employee to seek a remedy for this issue, to prevent and prohibit it even against the third party, and that is something very important for all of us to understand, even the organizations to understand. What is sexual harassment? It seems like we all know it, but often we see a lot of complaints where the situation that we're dealing with is actually gender-based discrimination. So at the outset, we need to understand that these are two different concepts. Gender-based discrimination is not the same as sexual harassment, and the law as we have it today only addresses sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is only a subset of gender-based discrimination. So if somebody tomorrow mocks you for taking maternity leave, or they crack a joke on you going away on a maternity leave, or they judge you for it, or something like that, it's a gender-based discrimination. Because sexual harassment is, as you rightly pointed out earlier, is physical advances or an attempt on a physical advance, or verbal, non-verbal communication, gesture, even staring, even showing pornographic material. But it has to have a sexual connotation to it. I get a lot of people who consult me on these issues and service issues, especially in government institutions. And the problem, the line is very thin, and sometimes we don't understand that what we are complaining against are larger administrative issues, and there is no sexual connotation to it, there is no sexual advance to it. And what happens is that once you file that complaint is looked into, and the ICC, of course, returns a finding that there is no sexual harassment, and then you are called out for filing a false complaint and abusing the law. So that is why I think in the overall debate, it is very important for us to understand this very basic distinction. And in terms of criminal law, there are two ways in which somebody's modesty can be outraged. One is by use of criminal force. The other is by use of words or gestures. So it would really depend on the facts of the situation that takes place. And outraging the modesty of a woman is also something that has evolved with time. When you look at the law talks about changing norms and standards. And at the end of the day, when we talk about sexual harassment, even it is about the impact that is there on the woman concerned. It is not so much about the intent behind the conduct or the act. One standard that ICC applies to complaints that come before it would be if something can be one is of course like reasonable person. So something that is said it has, if it is offensive to a reasonable person, it is offensive, like we're not talking about an extra sensitive person, but otherwise the second aspect of it is the impact that it creates on the person concerned, and the excuse that I did not mean to say these words with that intent cannot be taken by the accused person or the person who's being blamed for bad behavior. So far as outraging the modesty is concerned, that there is no particular definition. It is what happens. It depends from situation to situation. But yes, it can be by way of physical advances or application of force, or it can be by use of words and gestures. And I must point out that in 2013 the law has been substantially amended even in terms of criminal law, and the law now incorporates even sexual harassment as part of Indian Penal Code, and even stalking. Like voyeurism, when you are observing somebody in private. And they don't expect you to be there, or if you are filming somebody with consent, but the use of that film or photograph is not with your consent, that is an offense. So somebody stalking you is an offense. Somebody following you is an offense. So all of that. So law has
In the present circumstances, the meaning of we have to broaden the definition of sexual harassment. So suppose asking for a late night call, which can be avoided and it's not really urgent, there's no emergency at such a time, can be a part of sexual harassment. So this can go to the internal committee. So yes, we always have to look at the law in a broader perspective is what I think. I've also seen cases where online meetings are going on. There are trainings that are happening, and somebody just shares a unwanted picture, an inappropriate picture, and that's also become a case of sexual harassment. But sometimes when you don't know who's doing it, then these cases go to the police, like I said, or it can go to the cyber crime. So every law has to be read with related laws as well. So then it's not just sexual harassment, then it also becomes a case under the cyber law. But if it's an office related call which can be avoided late in the night, and one is insisting and that creates a discomfort, or it's an unwelcome act of behavior for the lady, yes, this can be considered as a part of sexual harassment.
You need to stop as soon as the girl indicates that she's not interested, or she says no, this is not an acceptable behavior. And I can relate to it so much because back in college when I was doing my LLB, I was followed by this guy who would approach me on Facebook. He would be around everywhere that I go. He was in the same class, and despite my showing ample displeasure to that behavior, he still continued with his approaches. So it no longer remained casual young behavior. It wasn't acceptable to me. So it needed to stop as soon as I conveyed that I'm not interested in you and this is discomfort, this is causing discomfort to me. So I think that's where you draw the line. As soon as you get to know that this is not acceptable, the other person is not welcoming this, it has to stop.
Yeah, I think the litmus test is whether it is welcome or unwelcome. So if it's unwelcome, it is harassment. And if it is okay, that depends on the rapport with that person. So yeah, that's how you distinguish.
The intent also doesn't matter, because once you convey that your presence around me or your approaches are disturbing my peace of mind, then whatever your intent is in approaching me, even if it's just to apologize to me, it is it goes way beyond what is acceptable.
Then she has to go to the internal committee. So it's not about whether she's communicating to the person or not. It's not about whether she's telling them, him, her, that I don't like this behavior. It's not a prerequisite of filing a complaint. So in the first instance itself, even though one might think that there's such a trifle issue and it's not such a serious issue, but to her, it's creating an unsafe workplace, and hence that has to be reported to the internal committee. The sexual harassment also has to be looked at in a context, I would say. So sometimes that comes out as, oh, this may not be sexual harassment, maybe sexual harassment when we talk to the person and we get the entire context. So even in the international convention, which is the basis of this law, that's called as Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is also acronymed as CEDAW, CEDAW, has two components to sexual harassment. One is quid pro quo, where we talk about physical advance and physical contact of showing pornography or making a sexual colored remark or asking for a sexual favor, gesture, and all of that. And the second part is creating a hostile environment. And that is basically related to gender-based violence. So because you're a woman, I'll create a threat for you where you cannot work in this organization. I'll terminate your services, or there'll be a preferential treatment, or I'll humiliate you in a way that it affects your health and safety. Now, these are, sections that are related to sexual harassment, but they're part of the hostile environment, and that they're mostly gendered, because if she's a woman, she's being treated differently, and that's also included in this harassment. And so, when we do trainings, we say that it's not about just women. It is also about men, because you're working together. And so this awareness has to be for both men and women, because one must know how to conduct yourself, what is the decorum to be followed, what amounts to sexual harassment, because like Rujal mentioned, there are a lot of gray areas in the definition. A case that may not seem like a sexual harassment, ultimately when you go into the depths of understanding it, it is a case of sexual harassment. Sometimes there are cases that on the face of it look like a sexual harassment, but they're not sexual harassment. There are any other kinds of harassment that don't fall under the purview of this law. That's a very thin dividing line, and so I said that we have to look at every case in a context and not in isolation of certain incidences that have happened.